fears, a mix of joy, nervousness, and confusion swelled within him. It's been years he last saw Wine, his best friend and the one he always loved. Memories flooded his mind and he couldn't help but wonder how she had been and if she still held the special place for him in her heart. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his palm slightly sweating. Thoughts raced through his mind, wondering why she stopped contacting him. Will she still recognize him? What if she has someone else in her life? The car came to a sudden halt, breaking the chains of his thoughts. In a daze, he glanced at the road and his eyes locked on the figure lying motionless on the road. Without a second thought, he flung open the car door and rushed towards her. He knelt beside her, checking to see if she was okay. "Hey miss, are you alright?" he called out, having an odd feeling. He gently reached out to touch her shoulder but got no response. He turned her motionless body around and there before him was a face he knew all too well, the one for whom he returned. "Wine," he whispered with disbelief. Her face was paler than ever, her cheeks drained of color and her hair was disheveled like that of a mad woman. The sight of her condition squeezed his heart. He held her in his arms. She weighed like a feather. "Wine, my child, what happened?" He looked up where a lady in her late 50s rushed towards them while crying. What happened to her? She looked at him and stopped. A wave of surprise flashed through her eyes. "I don't know." She was lying on the road. He was staring at her face with eyes filled with agony. "I am taking her to the hospital." He stood holding her and made his way to the car while the lady also followed him. "I'm going with you." He just nodded, lost in a deep thought. At hospital, Them was sitting with a lower head. He felt numb at the moment. "If I am not wrong, you are 𝐘𝐿, right?" He snapped his head at her and nodded slightly. "How do you know?" Her eyes glistened with tears. "Wine has your picture. She calls for you whenever her past haunts her." Then stared at her with confusion. What happened to her? Why is she with you? How do you know her? He asked all the questions that were running in his mind. Her sister Avery left her with me. She didn't want to leave Wine in that house alone, as Avery got married and moved abroad with her husband. You have no idea what Wine has been through. You are too late. She has been waiting for you each moment. She doesn't even recognize her sister anymore, but you seem to be memorized in the depth of her soul. She wiped her tears. Than's body trembled. He let out a shaky breath. What exactly happened? His voice came out as a whisper. After her mother passed away 6 years ago. Then interrupted her. "It's been 6 years she passed away." Hajima nodded. Wine is sexually assaulted by her mom's stepbrother. After seeing her condition, you can know the rest. She whimpered silently. Then stood with wide eyes. He felt the world spinning around him. "What?" he barely whispered. A sharp pain rose in his chest. His heart shattered into millions of pieces, consumed by anger, rage, and helplessness. The pain of knowing that Wine had endured such unspeakable horrors was unbearable. The nurse rushed towards them, grabbing their attention. "Your patient is awake, but no one can control her. Please come with me." Hajima was the first one to take a step forward, while Ken also dragged his numb feet. As they went closer to the room, Wine screamed and the sound of crashing glass could be heard. Hajima rushed inside while Ken stood frozen at the door. Two male nurses were trying hard to hold her while she was screaming. The doctor took the injection and went closer to her. Hold her firmly. He seemed to have been pissed off already. "Leave me," she yelled, pushing away the male nurse while the doctor was about to insert the injection, but she slapped his hand. The injection fell on the floor. She attacked his hands, sinking her teeth, making him groan. The male nurse pulled her back. "Stop getting on my nerves." He yelled at her and raised his hand to slap, but his hand remained in the air while Wine's eyes were filled with dread. Past events flashed before her eyes. She scooped back, covering her ears and shaking her head in denial while Hajima pushed the nurses and pulled her into her embrace. "Is this how you treat your patients?" His calm yet dark tone sent chills down his spine. Everyone went silent, including Wine. "Mr. Kim," she wasn't coming into her grasp. He stuttered, then released his hand with a jerk. "Get lost from here, everyone." He glared at all of them in a blink of an eye. Everyone disappeared. Then turned towards Wine. Her face was buried into 𝐁𝐿's embrace. She was visibly trembling and muttering something. Wine, why did you walk out of the house without informing me? She asked softly and tilted her head. Wine was holding her firmly. I wanted to play. What were you doing on the road then? She quickly pulled out and spoke, forgetting 𝐁𝐿's presence as she hadn't seen his face yet. 𝐁𝐿, I went to play there. 4 or 5 bad boys came. They called me a mad girl, mentally ill, childish fool. Her face turned gloomy, scratching her head. 𝐁𝐿 noticed her hair seemed not to be combed for days. His heart ached. This wasn't how he left her. The old Wine had gone long ago. Then she squeezed her hand gently. Then they wanted to snatch this from me. She raised her fist. They pulled my hair and hit me. They said I was hallucinating. There's no 𝐁𝐿. I should be sent to the mental asylum. 𝐁𝐿 wanted to rip off every person's head who hurt her. But I ran and saved this, she said with a smile, swaying her head right to left like a kid and opened her fist to smooth out the crumpled photo of 𝐁𝐿. Wine, he whispered, moving closer to her. Wine froze on her spot. I'm back. He blinked away his tears. She looked at him with a timid gaze. 𝐁𝐿 fixed his gaze on the photo in her hand, which she had taken from him when he was moving abroad 8 years ago. 𝐁𝐿, she mumbled and looked at 𝐁𝐿, who nodded with a smile. Wine fixed her gaze back on 𝐁𝐿, who was standing close to her. She hesitantly raised her hand and moved it closer to his face, but moved it back. Don't you recognize me? His voice raised with longing. Wine glanced at 𝐁𝐿 and then at 𝐁𝐿. She touched his face with her fingertips. Her eyes sparkled. 𝐁𝐿, she giggled, clapping her hands happily. 𝐁𝐿 couldn't stand her condition anymore. He felt his soul was leaving his body with each passing moment. Time skipped. 𝐁𝐿 brought Wine and 𝐁𝐿 home after her discharge. Now Wine had fallen asleep while 𝐁𝐿 was sitting on the couch, staring at her sleeping figure with red eyes. 𝐁𝐿 entered the room and called him out. 𝐁𝐿, I just received a call from my village. There is some problem with my family. I have to leave. Can you take care of Wine? He looked at her and nodded. Don't worry, I promise I will take care of her. He clenched his fist. His voice was devoid of any emotion. Then I'll get going. Then stood showing his hands in his pockets. I'll send my driver with you. If you need anything, you can contact me. She smiled, patting his shoulder. Thank you, I just need Wine's safety, nothing else. Please heal her. She glanced at Wine and then at 𝐁𝐿. I hope you can bear with her condition. 𝐁𝐿 just nodded, clenching and unclenching his fist. 𝐁𝐿 walked to Wine and kissed her on the forehead. 𝐁𝐿 went to see her off and instructed the driver. After a while, he came back to the room. Wine was still soundly asleep. He sat on the couch staring at her. I'm responsible for every pain you endured. I shouldn't have neglected it when you were pleading with me to come back. Was this the reason you wanted me to come back? Tears rolled down his face. I lost you, Wine. I'm sorry for leaving you. He closed his eyes and leaned back on the couch. He didn't realize how much time had passed until he heard shuffling voice. 𝐁𝐿 swiftly opened his eyes and stood. Wine suddenly screamed, clutching the bedsheets in her fist. 𝐁𝐿 strode towards her and pat her face. Wine. She was drenched in cold sweat. Wine. She fluttered her eyes and sat straight, breathing heavily. Monster, go away, leave me, she screamed, hitting him with the pillow. Wine, it's me, 𝐁𝐿. He moved away the pillow while she covered her face with her hands. Look at me. She sat still and slowly peeked through the gap in her fingers. 𝐁𝐿, she whispered and looked around the photo which was underneath the blanket. She opened and smoothed it, glancing at him. 𝐁𝐿, she mumbled, fixing her gaze on him and reached out her hand. She reluctantly touched his nose with her index finger. 𝐁𝐿, why didn't you come when that monster? She stopped and burst into tears. He touched me in a bad way. No one believed me. I called your name, but you didn't come. She suddenly grabbed him by the collar and yelled at him. Why didn't you come? I was waiting for you. She was glaring at him as if she would swallow him alive. 𝐁𝐿's eyes were filled with agony. He knew she was not in her right state. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone in the first place. He cupped her face and wiped her tears. No one believed me. They said I'm mad. She cried. 𝐁𝐿 pulled her closer to his chest. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I promise I'll make him pay for his every deed, he whispered darkly when pulled out. Will you leave me? She asked, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. He shook his head in denial. I'll stay with you forever. Pinky promised. She held her pinky finger in front of him. He smiled faintly and interlocked his pinky finger with her. She grinned, scratching her head. I'm hungry. I'll bring you food, he said instead, but she held his hand. Where are you going? She asked, looking around timidly. To bring you food from the kitchen. He patted her hand gently. No, don't leave me alone. She tightened her grip. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Until then, you can play on my phone. He slid out his phone and handed it to her. Just 5 minutes, okay? He nodded, assuring her. She reluctantly released his hand and fixed her attention on the phone. Then walked out, lost in a deep thought. After 5 minutes, he came back with the tray and placed it before her. One was giggling and laughing, staring at the screen. You can watch that later. Eat first and have your medicines. He took away the phone. She pouted, scrunching her nose, and began eating. Eat slowly, you'll choke, he said, seeing her stuffing her mouth with both hands. She began coughing, then gave her the water, patting her back gently. Should I feed you? He asked after a while. Vine nodded, wiping her mouth with her sleeve. Yes, but how will you eat? I don't want to eat, he said, bringing the morsel to her mouth. She held his hand and brought it to his mouth, swaying her head right to left. Sam took away the dishes after they quietly finished eating. When he came back to the room, Vine was staring blankly at the invisible point. Vine, he called out, but she didn't respond. Vine, he sat beside her and held her hand. She flinched and looked at him. Why don't you comb your hair and sleep? He said, staring at her affectionately. She reached out her hand to her hair and trailed her fingers, but they got tangled up. I don't like it. Ajuma combs it sometimes, but it hurts. She stopped, realizing something. Where is Ajuma? She looked around. Did she leave me like that girl, 𝐸𝐴𝐴? He held her hand gently. Ajuma went to meet her family. She'll be back soon, and that girl 𝐸𝐴𝐴 is your sister Avery. She got married and has her own family. She had to leave, he said in a low tone, staring right into her eyes, which once held sparkle. Where is my family? I'm your family. We are a family. He held her cheek. That means you will marry me. He was taken back by her question, but soon chuckled. Of course, I'll marry you. That's why I came back. She smiled, widely clapping her hands. Now let's comb your hair, he said, and took the hairbrush and comb. Do it slowly. She sat straight, then gently untangled her hair, which took more than 15 minutes. He tied them in a braid. Here we go. Did you feel any pain? She turned to face him. No, I didn't. Thank you. You're so good. He smiled, patting her head. Take care of your hairs. They are beautiful. Do you like them? She held her braid, then nodded. Will you comb for me every day? Sure. He kept the comb and hairbrush on the dressing table and gave her his phone. Play on this until I come back. She nodded while he made his way to the washroom to freshen up. After 15 minutes, he came out. Vine was immersed in his phone, giggling. Then picked the medicine and water. Have this. She shook her head in denial. Vine, I won't give you my phone again, he said sternly. She puffed her cheeks and took the medicine. No sleep, no more phone. Just a little, please, she whined, shaking her head in denial, but then tucked away the phone and tucked her. He was about to turn off the light, but she held his hand. Don't switch off the light, I'm scared. Then froze at his spot. He still remembered Vine couldn't sleep with a single light on. He composed himself and nodded. Where will you sleep? She asked, staring at the window. On the couch. Can you please sleep with me? I'm scared. Ajuma is not here. She sleeps with me, she said in a low tone. Then thought for a while and climbed on the bed. He lay straight beside her, keeping a proper distance between them. Vine faced him, staring at his side profile as he was staring at the ceiling. Both of them were quiet until a click sound was heard from the window. Vine jumped on his chest, taking him off guard. What happened? He asked, holding her shoulders. She buried her face into his chest. He's there, he came. Her voice trembled, pointing towards the window. It might be a cat. He stroked her hair. She held tightly onto him. Sam pulled her closer, letting out a sigh. He promised himself he would make Sheldon pay for what he did to him. Next day, this morning 𝐭 woke up only to see Wine staring at him with her hands under her chin. Never did he think any morning would be this beautiful. He freshened up and told her to freshen up. She reluctantly told him to cover the mirror in the washroom. He was confused but didn't say anything and covered it. Now he was combing her hair while Wine was immersed in his phone. He tied her hair and was about to stand, but his phone rang, making Wine flinch. "I have to take this call," he said, patting her head. Wine nodded and handed him the phone. 𝐭 walked out, answering the call. "Yes, Blake, what's the news about him?" he asked impatiently, closing the door behind. "He is in our grasp. What else do you want to do?" 𝐭 rubbed his temples, letting out a sigh of relief. "Leave the rest to me. Bring him to my basement tonight," he muttered through a clenched jaw. "All right, what about his family? What do you want me to do with them?" "Nothing much. Just make their life hell. Destroyed them financially, mentally, and emotionally." Blake chuckled darkly. "It's going to be fun." 𝐭 smiled, shaking his head, and opened his mouth to speak, but Wine screamed, and the voice of breaking glass grabbed his attention. Meanwhile, as 𝐭 walked out, Wine's gaze landed on the dressing mirror that she had been avoiding. She stood and subconsciously went closer to it. After staring at it for a while, she stood right before it. The reflection came into view, her hands clenched into the face while her nails dug into her palms. "I'm filthy, disgusting," she was whispering, continuously picking up the bottle of perfume and smashing it against the mirror with full force. "I'm filthy, disgusting." She screamed like a maniac, holding her hair harshly, almost ripping it off her skin. She picked up the glass, while in the meantime 𝐭 entered. He stared at her with wide eyes. Wine stopped, yelled and strode towards her, but she had already pierced the glass over her wrist. "Stay away from me, I'm filthy," she cried, pressuring the glass on her wrist. 𝐭 held her hand and pulled it out with trembling hands. "What did you do? Are you out of your mind?" he said, sliding out his phone, and called the doctor while Wine was crying, clenching her jaw. "Leave me, stay away from me, I'm filthy, disgusting," she said. "You're disgusted with me, that's why you didn't come back. Move away," she said, trying to withdraw from his grip. 𝐭 stared at her with anguish. Her words were piercing through his soul. "Who said?" he asked in a low tone. "His wife, that monster's wife." 𝐭 clenched his fist, pressing the handkerchief against her wrist gently. Soon the doctor arrived and treated her wound and gave her some painkillers. At night, the whole day Wine was quiet, staring at an invisible point blankly. 𝐭 took an appointment with a psychologist. Now he tucked her to sleep after giving her some sleeping pills that the doctor had prescribed. He walked to the basement where a lady's heart-wrenching cries echoed. Blake was standing waiting for him. "You took long." 𝐭 lazily walked closer, rubbing his ear. "Cut off her tongue, she's too noisy." He pointed at Sheldon's wife, who was being beaten by Blake's men. Blake chuckled. "Sure, Your Highness." 𝐭 ignored him and walked where Sheldon was tied up. "Who the hell are you? Get me out of here," he yelled, but stopped as soon as 𝐭's figure came into the view. "I see lover boys here," he said with a smirk. 𝐭 clenched his jaw, staring at him deadly. His dark aura intimidated Sheldon. "Let me go. Why did you kidnap me? And what did you do to my wife?" 𝐭 chuckled, shrugging his shoulders casually. "Her fingers and toes are missing, as you can hear her cries." "You bastard, what do you want from us?" 𝐭 blew a punch on his jaw. "After ruining Wine's life, you still dare to ask me?" Sheldon fell off along with the chair. "Oh, come on, you have no idea how many times I have devoured Wine's blood." 𝐭 placed his foot on Sheldon's face with full force, making him gasp for air. "Don't say her name with your filthy mouth." 𝐭 dragged him by the hair towards the mirror, which was lying on the ground. He was certain a bunch of Sheldon's hair was ripped off his skin. "Since you made her life a living nightmare, I'll make you beg for death. But death will never come to you," he said, and hit Sheldon's face on the mirror, which broke and pierced through his cheek. He cried a painful groan. "Leave me, please, I'm sorry." 𝐭 chuckled, straightening the chair to face him. "I haven't even done anything yet and you're bleeding already," he said, staring at the piece of glass that was stuck in Sheldon's cheek. Them slid a sharp knife from his pocket and grabbed him by the hair harshly. "No, please, no," he cried, seeing Them bringing the knife closer to his face. Them pulled out the piece of glass out of his face as if it were the seed of avocado rather than the glass in his face. Sheldon's cries echoed, making him rub his ears. "You're so noisy," he said, tightening his grip on his hair, and cut his hair along with his skin. Sheldon's face was drenched in blood. He passed out after screaming in pain. "You just proved you're my best friend. I had no idea you could be this ruthless," Blake said with a chuckle, playing with the knife in his hand while leaning on the wall. Then just shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. "How about his wife? She also passed out." Then just nodded and made his way out. "I'll check on Wine." Blake shook his head while Them made his way back to his room where Wine was sleeping peacefully. Them went to freshen up and came out after a few minutes. He stared at her and sat beside her. "I failed you, I'm sorry," he whispered, kissing her forehead, and laid beside her, pulling her closer. Time skipped. 1 month passed in a blink of an eye. Them hired a psychologist for Wine. She had sessions the whole month while Them was always by her side. At least she doesn't hurt herself anymore and has nightmares. Ajuma also came to meet her while Avery also contacted him and thanked him for taking care of Wine. Now Wine had freshened up while Them was soundly asleep. She sat by his side and shook him gently. "Them, wake up." He faintly hummed in response. "Them, wake up, we have to go to the gym," she whispered in his ear while patting his face gently. He held her hand and placed it on his cheek. "We still have time, it's too early, come sleep," he said with closed eyes and patted the empty space beside him. Wine thought for a while and a hint of mischief flashed through her eyes. She held her hair and brushed it gently against his nose. Them scrunched his nose, throwing his hand in the air, and switched to the other side. Wine brushed it against his ear. He swiftly held her hand and pulled her towards him. She landed on his chest. "You're being too naughty, aren't you?" he asked in a husky voice, stroking her jawline with his thumb. "I want to go to the gym, but you're still asleep," she said with a pout, placing her hands under her chin and moving closer to him. "All right, let's go." She silently stared into his red eyes, then followed his brows and opened his mouth to speak, but Wine spoke up. "Then you're so beautiful," she said in a state of trance and touched his features with her fingertips. He chuckled, tugging the hair strands behind her ear. "I am a man, so I'm handsome, not beautiful." She leaned closer so much that they could feel each other's breath fanning their face. "No, you're beautiful. Everything about you is so beautiful." She subconsciously pressed a soft kiss on his nose and then on his eyes, taking him off guard. "I guess we don't have to go to the gym anymore," he said, tightening his grip on her. Wine's trance broke while her face flushed red, realizing what she had done. "No, I want to go." She flustered, trying hard to get out of his embrace, then smiled, releasing her. She jumped out of the bed and sat on the sofa, rubbing her red cheeks. At gym, both of them arrived at the gym, which was made in the backyard of his house. Since 15 minutes, Wine was standing in a corner, fidgeting her fingers with a lower head, then glanced at her while doing push-ups. "What's wrong, Wine? Should we head back?" She shook her head in denial and looked at him. Her crimson red cheeks made him smile. "All right, forget about it and come here." She hesitantly walked towards him. "Are you embarrassed? I'll forget you kissed me, don't worry." He teased her. She glared at him. "No, I didn't, but I remember you did. Why are you so shy?" He looked up to her. "I'll cry," she mumbled, not knowing why she was feeling so embarrassed all of a sudden. "Come on, Wine, I'm all yours. You can do anything to me. I like it," he said, staring at her affectionately while Wine walked and sat on his back. "Does that mean it makes you happy?" she asked, leaning on his shoulder. "Yes." He slowed his pace. "Then I'll make you happy." She placed her chin on his shoulder, encircling her arms around his neck. After a while they were done and headed back to freshen up. Wine was holding his arm firmly with a smile playing on her face, but soon disappeared as soon as they entered the living room. "Mom, Dad," he stepped closer to them while Wine hid behind him, trying to escape their stare. "Why didn't you inform me you were coming?" "You didn't pay us a visit. It's been more than a month since you returned." Her tone held a hint of complaint. Wine, go to the room and freshen up. He sent her away and sat on the couch across them. I was busy with some personal stuff, he said casually. Is your personal stuff that girl? Mr. Kim raised his brow. Thang nodded. Fine, Thang, I know you care about her. She's your friend, but you can't neglect your life like this. I'm not neglecting anything, Mom. Mine is my first priority. You better talk openly while you're here. Mr. and Mrs. Kim exchanged glances before speaking. Since you are back, we want you to get married. Your brother has been settled already, so now it's your turn. Wine, who was coming to ask for Thang's phone, stopped in her tracks. Her heartbeat raised wildly. I have seen a few girls for you. How about you go on a blind date? Thang leaned back on the couch. Well, yeah, I'll marry soon, but I want to marry Wine. They stared at him as if he had gone mad. Come on, Thang, she still acts like a kid. She even wore men's clothes. She doesn't know how to cook. How would she even take care of you in the future? Mom, she has been through so much, don't you know? So what if she wears my clothes? I don't want her to take care of me. I want to take care of her instead. I don't even deserve her. Tears welled up in Wine's eyes. She bit her lower lip. I'm sorry, I just meant she's not suitable for you. Then cut her off while Wine ran back to the bedroom unnoticed by everyone. Please stop it, Mom. Why does it matter to you if I am happy with her? His cold tone sent shivers down her spine. Thang is right, we just need his happiness. There is no point in arguing. He cast her a glance and fixed his gaze on Thang. I'm proud of you, Thang. No one would have done this much for anyone. Just remember, don't let her rely on you entirely. If there is something she wants to do for you or herself, let her do it. It will help her in the future. He stood and pat his shoulder. Thang just nodded while Mr. and Mrs. Kim bid farewell to him and walked out. Thang sat for a while and made his way to his bedroom to check on Wine. As he entered, a frown crept on his face, seeing her lying on her stomach on the bed, while her face buried in the pillow. Wine, why didn't you change it? He went closer to her and stroked her hair softly. She sniffed and lifted her head to meet his gaze. I don't want men's clothes anymore. Bring me new clothes. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand and sat straight. But I like to see you in my clothes. Is this why you were crying? He asked, sitting beside her. Will you teach me cooking? I want to cook for you. He understood she might have listened what his mom said. Why? Because I want to make you happy and get married to you. She held his hand. Even if you don't learn it, I will still marry you because I love you. But I want to cook. Alright, I will teach you. She threw her arms around him. Thank you. She pulled out and held his face. How do we know we love someone? I want to love you. She asked innocently. Thang chuckled, holding her hands. Do you feel something when you are around me? She swiftly nodded. My heart beats really fast. My cheek heats up and I feel like I want to cling on to you forever. I feel like killing any girl who comes near you. I want to die in your arms. She was counting it on her finger, unaware that her innocent confession made his heart skip a beat. Does that mean I love you? They nodded with a smile. Wine smiled back and kissed his cheek. Wine, you won't be scared if I do something. You trust me, right? She nodded. Thang leaned closer and captured her lips in a soft kiss. She held his collar in a firm grip, closing her eyes. Thang devoured her lips until he was satisfied and pulled out. Wine hid her face in the crook of his neck. The room erupted with Thang's laughter while Wine slapped his shoulder. Wedding day. The wedding hall was filled with the soft music, creating a warm atmosphere. Thang stood there impatiently waiting for Wine to walk down the aisle. After what seemed to be forever, the music changed when the door opened, grabbing everyone's attention. Thang's eyes lit, seeing Wine walking to him along with Mr. Kim. He could see her nervous and restless expression through the veil that covered her face. He smiled widely, stepping forward. As soon as they came closer, Wine rushed to him, making all the guests break into laughter. Thang, this thing and heels are so irritating. I want to take it off. She held her veil to take it off. Thang held her hands. Wait until this is over. He spoke softly. She nodded with a pout and gazed around the hall. Her eyes caught the sight of 𝐷𝐸𝐷 and 𝐸𝐵𝐷, who were smiling at her warmly. Hey, 𝐸𝐵𝐷, she yelled with a smile while waving at them. How do I look? Once more everyone broke into laughter. Her face turned red. Brides, stay calm, did I tell you? She tugged his sleeve. Fine, but scold them all. They laughed at me, she said, glaring at the guests, who still had soft smiles on their faces. Our wedding is still pending. Oh yes, priest uncle, please start. He shook his head with a smile. Soon the priest announced the wedding vows. Then kissed her on the forehead. Everyone's looking. You can't kiss me like that. She playfully slapped his shoulder. We saw nothing, sister-in-law. She stared at him with wide eyes while Tim glared at his brother, who shrugged his shoulders with a mischievous smile. I just kissed you on the forehead. It's not a big deal. She buried her face in his chest. I feel shy, she mumbled, making him smile.